Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. We are just 10 days away from the NFL draft, and quite frankly, it's Christmas. There's going to be a lot of hope for this Minnesota Vikings team, but we still have a long way to go. The Vikings made a signing today to beef up the cornerback room. There's more drama with Danielle Hunter, and we will talk about that and a lot more. Welcome to the Real Forno Show.
Welcome to the Real Forno Show. Managing editor of the USA Today's Vikings Wire. Betting and college football analysis for the Fantasy Points website. Publisher of Substack Run and Shooter. Host of The Good, The Bad, and The Hungry on the Voices of Wrestling Podcast Network. As well as a founding member of Vikings First and SKOL.
Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to another episode of The Real Forno Show. I am your host, Tyler Fornes. With me, as always, top right corner, it is producer Dave. Dave, how are you doing on this wonderful Monday?
Oh, it's been a busy Monday. Lots of Viking news out there. We'll get into some of that. Want to welcome everybody that's in the comments already. You guys rock. Let's talk some Vikings football.
Absolutely. Thank you, everybody, for joining us. If you are new to the show, welcome, first off. And second, you're going to get comprehensive Minnesota Vikings analysis from every angle. And the best part is we don't have to pay anybody. We are our own bosses. We're going to give you our true, honest opinions. And that is honestly where the best analysis comes from. Genuine analysis by looking at every angle. So we have the passion for this team, and we're excited to continue to deliver that here on Vikings First and SKOL, where you can please subscribe to our YouTube channel and help us continue to grow that. If you're more a podcast person, go subscribe to our podcast feed. All you have to do is search Vikings First and SKOL. And if you just love us, subscribe to both. Help us out. We greatly appreciate it. The more, the merrier as far as those subscriptions are going. Dave, I do have some bad news. My feed is still blurry, so we're gonna have to work through that with the mock draft again. I don't know what's going on. I mean, I have a pretty new laptop. I got it in August, so
it may be have to do with your internet speeds.
Yeah, that very well could be. We can test that later. Anyways, let's have some fun here today. And Dave, we're gonna start off the conversation with the beginning of the offseason program. And today was the first day for off-season program. But here's what's noteworthy, okay? This is voluntary. But most players have it built into their contract that if you show up, you get anywhere from like $50,000 to $100,000. And the Vikings actually have built in to Marcus Davenport's contract something like $2 million for workout bonuses, which I think is their way of trying to push more money next year, because I think he didn't show up last year for those, which makes it a not likely to be earned incentive. So you can do that. It's
one of those tweaks Rob Brzezinski knows, one of those tricks.
This is the genius of Rob Brzezinski, okay? If you show up, basically, you get paid for showing up. Usually between $50,000 and $100,000. Those are kind of the normal benchmark. Sometimes you'll see it at like 200 to give like a little extra incentive. But for some of these guys, it's a drop in the bucket. For others, 50 grand is a lot of money in context to what they're making in the NFL, not just in a general sense. So $50,000 makes a massive deal to a lot of these lower level guys. And that's why you see a pretty good turnout across the board. Two guys that are not going to be in attendance. One of them we kind of already knew with the report over the weekend that he could be released before the NFL draft, and that was running back Dalvin Cook. If you were watching this weekend, he won the catch, which was a fishing competition. He and Matt Judon, edge for the New England Patriots, were on a team, and they ended up winning the competition, catching multiple fish and beating out the rest of the NFL players that were playing. And edge rusher Danielle Hunter. We've basically been projecting this forever. I don't know if we've specifically said it on the show, but I never expected him to end up making it to these offseason activities. Well, let's just be honest. He's only going to be bringing in $4.9 million in cash. He knows what he's worth. And even if you just don't want to talk about cash because you do a lot of signing bonus and stuff. So the cash brought in during the year on a $20 million contract may only be like $12 million. Well, his cap hit at $13.1 million doesn't scream one of the best edge rushers in the league either. So he's obviously unhappy. How will this get resolved? We really don't know. But this is the first step in Danielle Hunter kind of sharing some of those thoughts and giving away, hey, this is what's going on. I don't want to do this. And bing, bang, boom.
Mm-hmm. Hey, we'll find out how this goes. I mean, he's played this game before. Part of Danielle's problem was his representation prior. I think he switched since, giving him such a poor deal. And Rob Brzezinski and the boys used last year. They gave him more of his, money up front so he'd play. And now he's left with what's on his contract, and it's pittance. And that's why he's upset. But part of that being upset is on him. It is what it is. Now, what will the Vikings do? I don't know. If they trade him, the Vikings take a bigger hit. It's going to cost them. So whatever team wants him is going to have to offset that somehow, some way, either in value of draft picks or in cash, homie. And sometimes trades work that way, but we won't know until it happens.
And that's kind of the tough part. There's been talk about a potential Danielle Hunter trade for a long time. But here's what's going on. We really don't know what his value is going to be. And we talked about this last year. Or sorry, I think it was last week, actually, Dave. If this was 2 years ago, like before the neck injury in 2020, you're talking about potentially 2 first-round picks, the Khalil Mack trade. Now, I genuinely don't know if you get one, and that has nothing to do with his skill talent. That has to do with the fact that he has the neck injury, and then he had a torn pec. And yes, he did play every game last year, but when you basically missed the majority of 2 seasons in a row, that raises a lot of concerns, especially for somebody you're going to commit a lot of draft capital to, along with a big contract extension. So you're kind of talking about everything all encompassing here, Dave. And cool, I got the hiccups right as we're doing our show. This is awesome audio. But when you encompass all these things together, you don't know what his value is going to be. But all it takes is 2 teams. And the reason I say that instead of 1 team, when there are multiple teams involved, the price goes higher because you can pit them against each other and up the bid. If a team like, oh, you're the only team interested, well, I'll give you a 3rd-round pick. There are 2 teams invested. Maybe it's a 1st and a 3rd-round pick because both teams are fighting to get him. Like, these are both hypothetical scenarios. I'm not going to commit to anything being the value because I genuinely don't know. If I were another team trading for a 29-year-old Danielle Hunter, I would start by offering a 3 and then be willing to potentially give up a late 1. That's kind of where my mind is at. I don't know what the NFL will think. And honestly, that's the only thing that really matters, especially because you're going to have to pay him. What do you think, Dave?
Well, there's the one catch, though, and this is what bothers me. If they trade Danielle Hunter, there's an acceleration of salary that comes onto this year. And I think it goes up to $18 million it would cost the Vikings in salary cap versus if he stays and then it's only $13 million or whatever it is. It's just like a $6 million jump or something like it, $6 to $8 million jump. Just cost to get rid of him. That, to me, if I was the Vikings, would have to be figured into the trade. If that team's going, I'll give you a 3rd, and you go, you can go stick it where the sun don't shine, because we're not going to give you a top 10, top 20 edge rusher in the league for that, and then have to pay so you get him on the cheap and then can sign him to a long-term deal, and you're all nice and happy because you don't have to pay him much this year. You've got to compensate us for the ability to get him. And if you're going to do that, either one, you're going to offset the costs, which is a possible trade deal, or you're going to do it in value and draft picks. And that raises that draft pick. You're going to look at it and go, well, I can give you a third, and you go, no, that quote 18 million, and we know how good he is worth more than a third. You got to up that. And then will it be a second? Will it be a first? Will it be next year's first? However they want to play it, they are going to have to do that to offset that. Because I wouldn't just trade him and then eat all that money and go, hey, we traded him. He's no longer on the roster. We're sticking with younger dudes. Well, that's a bad move because you didn't get the value from him. And that's the problem I have. So I'm curious to see what the front office does, because I'm not sure they're going to do it well. Put it that way. But we'll see.
Yeah. I'll say this much, and we'll move on because the Vikings also signed a player today.
Yes.
One of the big things here, Dave, is, and let's jump into this, quarterback. Danielle Hunter could be a trade piece to get a quarterback. And it's not something that people want to hear, and it's not necessarily something I'm going to advocate as far as doing. But you have to keep that in the back of your mind. Let's shoot here. Arizona Cardinals, they need everything. You offer them Danielle Hunter and 3 first-round picks so you can go get your choice of likely, at this point, C.J. Stroud, Will Levis, Anthony Richardson, because news is coming out that the Texans aren't taking a quarterback at 2. They're going to get a defensive playmaker. And then Bryce Young is almost a guarantee at this point to go first overall. Like, that's a pretty enticing trade package. You get a young star player, and you get multiple first-round picks after this year to be able to continue to build your roster. Like, is it necessarily a good move? That's debatable. And I'll put it this way. If it hits, it's a great move. If it misses, it's a bad move. But the process, if you want to talk about process, trading an edge rusher about to exit his prime that has dealt with injury issues before you have to essentially overpay him is a smart business decision. It's why we're potentially moving on Kirk Cousins 1 year too early as far as what his production profile has been, because you want to be too early than too late. And it's a Bill Belichick principle. I think Kirk Cousins' best year as a Viking was 2022. And there's a lot of people that will come at me and be like, no, it was 2020 or it was 2019. Like, look, you got to watch it more critically than just watching on Sundays to really see some of this nuanced stuff. And you can't just look at box scores. You got to look at what he's doing, why he's making decisions. And last year, he was tremendous in how he made his decisions and his decision making and trying to attack down the field. That was massive for the Vikings.
All the way up to a 4th and 8th in the wild.
Yeah, that stunk. He reverted back to his old self. But that the whole reason you'd include Hunter is because then you don't have to give up any extra draft pick compensation, especially in a draft where you don't want to give up your third, then you wouldn't pick again until 119. Would you do it if the quarterback hit? Oh, yeah. You give up all your draft picks this year if the quarterback hit and was a star. But it's trying to be cost efficient and try to pay as little as absolute possible. And also try to understand that, hey, we have all these edge rushers. We have Za'Darius. We have Marcus Davenport. Like, they signed Davenport to that deal because they want to give him a long-term extension. They want to, but they're not comfortable doing it yet. They want a little more data. They want a little more information. They want to see him stay healthy. Once they see those things, Dave, that's when you're going to see a change, and that's when you're going to see Davenport get that contract extension. I don't know if this would be a good move. I think you can argue both ways. But if you really want that quarterback of the future, and you really believe it's one of C.J. Stroud, Anthony Richardson, or Will Levis, you go up and you get that guy. If you don't believe that they're that guy, then you consider them at 23. But if you're sold, like the Chiefs were sold Patrick Mahomes is going to be this great player. The Bills were sold that Josh Allen was going to be this great player. You go get him. You may end up with a Jared Goff who you need to dump in 5 years. You may end up with a Carson Wentz who gets too far into his own head. He starts to stink after playing like a borderline MVP. But you have to take that chance if you believe he's that guy. And you have to do so with conviction. And you have to do so with gusto. And if you end up being wrong, you got to live with it. but at least you had the balls to try. And that's something the last regime, and they lost the fastball in that. And I think the beginning of that was the Cordero Patterson trade up, and then it finished off with the Sam Bradford experiment. They never traded up again.
Not in
after that 2017 draft.
Significantly, not in the early rounds, no.
2017, they traded up in the second. They traded up in the third. And I think they traded up in the fourth as well to go get guys that they targeted. And I'd say it worked out decently well. But look, if you believe in the guy, you have to go get him. And I'm going to hit that. If the Vikings think Hendon Hooker's that guy at 23, I will hate it. But I will live with it, and I will end up trusting their process and hope they're right, and I'm wrong.
Hey,
that's it.
Like I said on Sunday, because 2 Bloggers was delayed today, Kwesi talked about they're looking for an impact player. Mm-hmm. They both got to agree, he and KOC, and if they believe said player, no matter who it is that impact player, then the process is generally correct at that point. And then you're weighing how much is it going to cost you, and then you want to get that as efficiently as possible. That's where Brez comes into play. We'll see what happens. It's going to be interesting. We're a week and a half away.
I know. I'm really excited. Dave, this is going to be a fantastic process.
So, and I appreciate everybody in the chats arguing over Danielle Hunter. It shows that, not everybody is on the same page or believes, and some of that resides within Egan. So there's probably the same arguments going on in Egan as well. So it's going to be interesting. Now, does he have the most value between him and Dalvin Cook? Probably. When it comes to trades, especially with Dalvin's salary, it's without a doubt he as a top 10 edge rusher, making as little as possible. He's got to be attractive. So we shall see. And I like your idea. If they tie that up with moving up and grabbing, one of the 4 quarterbacks, hey.
Yeah, it's.
And Davey said it. I'd rather be wrong and win a Super Bowl. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, if the Vikings win a Super Bowl and I'm wrong, I don't care. Here's the weird thing about the NFL and prognosticating and being a general manager. You're gonna be wrong. It's like a baseball player. Okay, baseball player. If you hit 3 out of every 10 pitches for hit, like 10 at bats, 3 hits and 10 at bats, that's considered really good. Now, general managers, they're going to miss a lot in the draft. It's about missing as little as possible and being as smart as you can with your process. Mm-hmm. Like, I ain't perfect. Nobody in the chat's perfect. Dave's only perfect when it comes to producing.
Not even then.
That's the thing, though. You want to lose the least amount. And it's not necessarily about, being safe. You can argue, and I don't remember who said it, but I want to give them the credit if I remember. It's not that a safe player is a guy who is considered NFL ready, who can just come in and operate an offense. No. A lower, like a high floor player, if you have elite traits, that raises your floor. Because even if you're not consistent with it, you still have this ability to take over a game because you have these great traits. And you can end up maximizing it. Like, there's so many little nuances here, but at the end of the day, you just don't want to be bad. You want to be capable. You want to be able to lose the least while still finding your massive hits. Like, I was looking at it this weekend. Rick Spielman's tenure at the end was fascinating. Of his first and second round picks, he had 2 massive hits, a pretty good hit, and an unfortunate situation that is really difficult to quantify. Justin Jefferson, Christian Darrisaw, Ezra Cleveland, and Jeff Gladney were his 4 top 64 picks, his last 4. That's pretty good. You would take that. You have one miss, and that miss you'll never truly know for multiple reasons if it could have been a hit. I'm happy with that. You want to lose less, but you also have a lot of clunkers in there, and outside of 2015, he had a bunch of struggles. That's part of the draft. That's why GMs cycle out a lot, because it's like a wrestling booker. Oh yeah, he's very good at choosing fine whiskeys, Davey. You are 100% right. Wrestling bookers, they create storylines, they create matches, and after a certain point, you have what's called burnout, where you need a break. You run out of ideas, and that's normal. That's normal for everybody, and sometimes you just need to slide someone else in. And then, you know what? For Rick, it was just his time. He is, whether he will admit it or not, by his performance, you could tell that there was some burnout there. He'd lost his fastball, and they ended up moving on, and we'll see what Kwesi has, because we genuinely just don't know what he has outside of one draft and now a second free agency. He's trying to fix a lot of Rick's mistakes, and this is going to be very interesting. But the big thing, and I'll leave it at this with quarterbacks: if you have a guy, go get him. Go get him. Pay the price. Go get him. That easy. That's simple.
We talked about it yesterday, and the guys in the chat are also talking about it. Value of Danielle. Is he an impact player? Yes. And you want those. You want those. What we talked about yesterday is brought in the nerd term. What was it? Points EPA? Not EPA.
Estimated
expected
points
added. You want guys that are impactful, that raises that number across, if you take the team's number, raises that number up, right? And is Danielle one of those guys? Yes. The quarterback's the most important. He can flux it up or down the most, and you want him. Everybody else usually falls in that average range, right? So you could swap them out and another average guy, and you're not moving that level at all. It's all about the same. You can get the bottom type that drag it down, but you need a bunch of that middle tier, because you can't have all the high ones, and you need specific high ones, impact guys, both on offense and defense. And defense, when it comes to stopping the pass, whether it be defending it on the backside or rushing it on the front side, is so, so important.
It absolutely is important, Dave. And I'm kind of looking at it I think that the Vikings, if they end up trading Hunter, I think it'll be a smart move overall, just because salary cap and all those other things. But we'll see. We've spent a lot of time on it. We're already a half hour into the show, and there's other things that we need to talk about.
Yes, we do. We got a new guy on the team this week.
Yes, we do have a new guy on the team, as I'm typing a message in the comments section right now. His name is Joejuan Williams. He came from the New England Patriots, and he was a second-round pick out of Vanderbilt in 2019. Look, he plays the same defense.
2019 picture, by the way.
Yep.
Here's a 2022 picture.
He's an interesting player. Bigger guy, length, not very fast, not super quick. But what he is good at is being able to utilize his size to his advantage. And one thing that I think is this is very similar to the signing last year of Jonathan Bullard in July. He knows the defense. He's going to be able to help these guys install it. And because he knows the defense, it's going to be a massive benefit. Now, this is probably your CB4. There's a chance he doesn't even make the team. I'd say he's a roster bubble-ish type of player. But at the end of the day, you have a guy that knows this system. You have a guy that's going to be able to help. And obviously, Brian Flores and Kevin O'Connell probably had a conversation with Bill Belichick about him at some point. Mm-hmm. Like, hey, what do you think of this guy? He did miss all of 2022 with a shoulder injury that he suffered in training camp in mid-August. Now, obviously, you have to make sure that clears out, and that's why the contract is not officially signed. But rather, Dave, the contract is they've agreed to terms. My guess is the terms are the Duke Shelley contract or less. It's probably a minimum deal. Maybe with some playing time incentives to give him a little bit more. We'll see. I see in the comments they're talking about a 4.6 40. Look, at the end of the day, when you have so here's the thing with the 40 time. If you have length, that matters just a little bit less. Okay, like if Joejuan Williams has 3-inch longer arms than another corner, he can run a little bit slower because in theory he's getting to the ball faster anyways because he's got the long arms. So I think it's a concern. But you're not talking about a guy you want to start. This is a depth guy. And I think that this is a solid depth addition, especially when you consider the price. Like, I have no issues with it. And you know what? There's probably not a whole lot guaranteed. And if he stinks during training camp, there you go.
Mm-hmm. He adds to the cupboard. We talked about it yesterday on 2-0 Bloggers. The quarterback cupboard is low. We up until this morning when we signed this kid, we only had 5, right, on the roster. 2 of them are special team or practice squad guys, and and you need at least 10 going into camp, at least 10, and you want more. You want to keep roughly 6 on the 53-ish, so. We need corners. This is one way to pick up corners. I fully expect in the draft we'll pick up another one. Whether it be early, late, or whenever, we'll get at least one more in the draft.
Yeah. And we're going to talk about that a little bit here because we're going to transition, Dave. We may have to – I think we're going to push the betting portion of the show to next Monday. Okay. Because this Wednesday we're going to have Brett Coleman who now works for the NFL.
Brett Coleman, yes.
Yes, I'm really excited to have him on to talk ball, and we're going to talk I don't even know what we're going to talk about. We literally may just have him on, and we're just going to literally talk NFL draft for however long, just because we have a topic. We don't need to be super specific. We've done so many position groups. The only ones we really haven't done are offensive line at this point. Safety, that class stinks. It's Brian Branch and then a bunch of meh. We'll try and cover that as well, and we're working on bringing in Arif Hassan.
Specialists? Not that we're going to draft one.
God, you know what? I'm too busy, I'll be honest, to talk about specialists. I just am. I'm working 12 to 16-hour days getting all this stuff done. We're not doing specialists. I apologize. Specialists matter. They exist. I'm fine with drafting one if they end up sticking around. If Daniel Carlson would have stuck around past week 2, guess what? We'd have an all-pro on the team at kicker. That's worth a round 5 pick to me. I'm sorry. Like, so many people are like, oh, you can get specialists anywhere. If they hit and they're really good, it's worth it. Like, I get the detractors. Oh, but so often they don't hit. Okay, that's fine. But if they hit, they're great. So who gives a shit? Just chill. Arif is going to come on, and we're trying to get a date scheduled right now. If you don't know him, Pro Football Network, Norse Code, Minnesota Football Party with Lockdown Sports Minnesota. And we'll probably just end up talking ball, just like we're going to do with Brett. And next Wednesday is going to be a really fun show before we transition into the second annual All-Forno Team. We're going to bring back a few previous guests. That is AJ Schulte of RPM Data, JP Acosta of SB Nation, and Kevin Fielder of the Vikings Wire. We're literally just going to sit and talk like a bunch of idiots at a bar, but except it being idiots, we are all knowledgeable about the NFL draft. We're just going to have a conversation. We're going to get the comments engaged. and it's just going to be unhinged. It's going to be fun, and Dave's probably going to be like, what in the hell did I get myself into? It's going to be a really good time. So that's what we have coming up. Davey asked something very interesting that I don't have any context of because I have not been able
his
to watch the
trade
show.
down proposal, and I don't remember it, to tell you the truth.
Davey, if you remember it, throw it in the comments, and we'll end up talking about it.
But he talked about a trade down proposal yesterday, and I'm cool with trade downs as long as we're not giving up that impact player. As long as, when I talked about it yesterday, I had a nice little chart that have on the mock draft database has a group of 10 or 12 players that are all showing Minnesota Vikings of selecting all that group. And if all those guys are available and you're happy with all those guys, trade down, right? Because one of them will be available when you trade down if you don't trade down too far, right? One of those guys will be available. You get value. You select whoever, whatever guy doesn't get picked that's just on your list, and you're good to go. Arif, short, bald, but knowledgeable. Arif was highlighted today on PFF. He was also highlighted on another show that I had listened to. Arif is quite knowledgeable. He developed, the consensus big board. And he did that well over a decade ago on spreadsheets. But it takes the guys that are the scouts that evaluate players as they were in college, and then the projecting type scouts, the ones that say this guy will turn into this guy in the NFL, and he mashes those together in a spreadsheet, and he sees the highest picks and the lowest picks, and he gives the average and the windows of that, and his consensus big board is over 80% correct over a decade. I mean, it is historically correct what he does. And Arif is quite knowledgeable, and I'm happy his career has taken off. He started at the Daily Norseman, and he is now nationwide NFL rep. So kudos for Arif. He is extremely knowledgeable.
Yeah, Arif rules. If you've never had an opportunity to talk to him, he's just a great human being. And I'm really excited to have him on the show. Once we get the date, we'll end up figuring it out. And then after the draft, we're going to have Connor Rogers of NBC Sports Edge, a really good friend of mine, to talk about the Vikings NFL draft and try to figure out what's going on moving forward. But Dave, let's talk about the All-Forno Team. And I want to give some context as to what the All-Forno Team is.
Mm-hmm.
The All-Forno Team it's basically my favorite players in the class. That's it. It's not who's the best. It's not who is really, really good. I loved watching these guys play football. That's it. Last year, the captain of the team was Ohio State wide receiver Chris Olave. Everybody knew my love for Olave. I had my name in a couple Discord chats. Chris Olave season. I was obsessed with Chris Olave. So this year, instead of 6 players, it is 8, and I'm really excited to share that. But before we do that, Davey has his trade proposal.
Yes, he talked about trading down, but not only part of trading down, in that trade down to gather some of the picks for next year as well as part of that trade. And I do think that's a good idea if that works out. And then they use them next year if they feel they've already got the guys they want and they can do that, by all means.
Yeah, I think that's an interesting idea to try and get a first next year.
Or a second or something. It depends where you are in the draft, but to give you a little bit more ammunition next year to move up.
Mm-hmm. I think what's interesting about trying to get a first next year, I think the only way you're doing that is if you're giving up a player, or you are going back from first to if the Dolphins want to come up. you're giving up 1, and then you're getting 51 in their first next year. That's the only way I can see it happening, unless you're giving up a player as well, just because that's like 23 doesn't hold a lot of value in terms of recouping another first-round pick.
Well, and we weren't talking about first. We were talking second and thirds and stuff like that, because it doesn't. And it makes sense. If you're going to think you're going to package them next year, even if they draft, say, Hendon Hooker in the second or third round, right? And we move down to get him, you've got a year to see, is he worth it? Is he, can he make it? And if, sitting on the bench, just like with Mond, the coaches can go, no, we don't need to see him play. We see him every day in practice. No, right? They could do that with Hooker and go, no, we're going, and then package those up next year and get whoever for an eventual Kirk Cousins replacement. Because everybody thinks the next year's quarterback group is going to be so good. We hear it year after year after year. And occasionally, some of them do, and some years they flame out. They
thought that quarterback group was going to be great in 21. They thought there's 22. They thought Spencer Rattler was going to be 101, and they had other guys projected high. Here's the thing: you don't know, and that's what I'm going to say. You don't know. If you're not sold on a guy, I understand waiting, but don't specifically wait on one guy because you don't know. You just don't. Like, even Andrew Luck, for all his hits, he lasted in the NFL, 6 years? And then he retired randomly, like, during training camp?
He was beat up.
That's what I'm saying. You don't know. And, like, just be careful. Be careful claiming next year's class. They still have an entire year of college football left. They still have an entire year to show their development and develop, or not develop. Like, there's a lot going on there, and you have to be careful. Let's hit a couple questions, and we're going to break out this All-Forno team and then do a mock draft. Let's see. Where did they go? Because there's been a few others.
The chat's been hot tonight.
Yeah, it has been. I love it. Anthony asks, is it possible we move 3 guys on draft night? I think it's very possible that they move 3 in some capacity. If I had to put the over-under, I'd put it at 1.5, because I think Dalvin Cook and Darius Smith leaving the team makes the most sense during the draft or before it. So between now and the end of the draft, I would say 1.5, because there's a chance that you end up keeping one of those guys because you don't feel like you're getting good enough value. Vikings seem content to hold on to Darius Smith. They really do, Dave. And because they're content holding on to him, well, they'll use him. Like, they have no problem using the player. Kyle asks, what do you think Dalvin is worth? Nothing? I don't think he's worth nothing, but I don't think he's worth nearly as much as you could have got from him a couple years ago. I think if you find a team to pay a 4th or a 5th, you call the league office right away and verify that trade. It's not just the talent, it's the age, it's the wear and tear, and it's
the cost,
the contract. Plus, you have a really good running back class coming in. If somebody offers you a 5 and you don't take it, considering you'd save an extra $2 million against the salary cap, I have questions. Like, you have to understand the market you're in. And like, I say this contextualized because I don't have these conversations with NFL GMs. I can only go by what I know. And what I know is if you get offered a 5 and you're going to get rid of the guy anyways, and you don't take it, you're doing something wrong, because I don't think you're getting more than that. Like, running back
if we dump Kirk next year without getting a suitable replacement is nuts. That may happen, though. It may happen on its own, because he's on the last year of his contract. He can leave after this season.
Yep.
Whether there's a replacement in place or not, he can leave.
Yeah.
And I suspect he will.
Dave, it's going to be very interesting. But let's get on to the All-Forno team.
Okay.
I love this group of players. It's 8 guys, and I'll be honest, because of the Vikings' needs and my limited amount of time, I watched no offensive linemen this year. I just got done with my 10th quarterback. I watched 20 wide receivers. I got 12 corners, 7 edge rushers, and I'm going to try and get some more defensive linemen done here in the next few days because I want to try and get those watched as well. This is a fun class, and I'll say this much. My All-Forno team has 2 receivers, 2 corners, a quarterback, 2 running backs, and what was the last guy? I'm blanking.
You've got let's see.
A
running back, corner, QB,
a safety hybrid.
Corner, safety.
Let's start at the top. Let's start with the team captain of the All-Forno team, and that is North Carolina wide receiver Josh Downs. Somebody that I really like. I've talked about him on the show multiple times. Luke Braun, host Locked On Vikings. He has this bit where he calls small players podcasters, and it kind of makes sense because if you've ever met Luke in person, he's not the largest guy. If you've ever met me in person, I look like I should be an offensive lineman in the NFL. But he's like, well, if you're a podcaster, I don't want you. That's kind of the bit, but it's not a one-to-one. Like Downs is a smaller guy, but he plays big. He was the number 1 contested catch receiver per PFF last year. And at 5'9", 171 pounds, he was very good, explosive in and out of routes. He has some refining that he needs to do, but I loved his game. He gave me flashes of Stephon Diggs with how he dips his hips and explodes outside, especially on like whip routes, return routes. Like I think that he is just that good, and his film was just stupid fun. I don't think he's a perfect prospect, especially like in this system. He'd basically be a slot. I think you could play him at Z on occasion because he's got the quick feet and he can win off of the line of scrimmage, but he's a guy you want to try to utilize in motion, get free releases to try and compensate for some of those physical limitations. But then that also can limitate your offense and ability to attack down the field with him as well. But he was just so much fun to watch, and I absolutely loved his film. And if he ends up going to the Vikings, I'd be absolutely thrilled. My prediction as of right now is the Vikings trade down and take Downs. We'll see. The Vikings have been mocked as of this morning. I calculated all industry mock drafts through Sunday. Dave, 388 mock drafts, 53 unique players. 53. That's absolutely bonkers. Absolutely bonkers.
Well,
there's no consensus anywhere.
It shows how hype for players moves up and down since, the end of last season to now, going through all the steps, the Senior Bowl, the East-West Shrine Game, the Combine, Regional Combine, Pro Days. You see hypes go up, hypes go down, and part of that's that. It's just sell clicks, and people start talking about people. So we'll see. But it generally all comes back to about the same point when it hits draft night.
Yeah.
Who's the next on your list?
We're going to stay with wide receiver. We're just going to kind of go down in the list. I have it in the article. If you want to follow along, I recommend. It's got short write-ups and links to all their scouting reports. It is SMU wide receiver Rashee Rice. This guy plays like he's 6'3", 6'4". And I love his physicality. I love his ability to go up and get the ball. I also really liked his ability to win in space and get yards after the catch. His field speed is faster than what he ran at the combine, which I think was a 4.5 flat. This guy can take off and he can keep separation from defenders. And I loved what he brought to the table. He had some struggles against better corners, especially playing at SMU. He played really good corners. He played guys like Sauce Gardner, Kobe Bryant. He played Deonte Banks this year, and they had a really good battle where he won some, he lost some. But when you look at all these things together, I think Rice could be a really, really good player. And think of a Robert Woods type player. Like, he's physical. You can get him in space. You can get him taking advantage of it in the middle of the field. Like, I love this player. I think he's a mid to late second round guy at the highest at this point. I thought he could potentially be a first round guy. I just don't think testing was good enough for him to be able to get there. But I love what Rice is able to do, and especially being a 6-foot guy winning at the catch point with that kind of physicality. Sign me up.
Gotcha. Next guy on your list was a running back.
UCLA running back Zach Charbonnet. Dave, if you would have dropped this guy into 1995, he would have ran for 1,300 yards. He is so multifaceted and talented, but he still has enough juice and athleticism to play in today's game, and he's a very well-rounded back. He is my third best running back this year, and I was honestly a little surprised at how much juice he had and how quick his feet were and his ability to just burst through the hole. He has good hands as a receiver. He can run decent enough routes, and I think there's room for improvement there. But he's a 215-pound back that still has the ability to be a 3-down back in today's NFL,
Mm-hmm.
and I think that you cannot overlook that. Just a really talented football player that finally got his shot against or once he transferred to UCLA, because he was in a very deep backfield at Michigan.
Speaking of other running backs,
our old colleague Ryan's going to be thrilled with that.
Mm-hmm.
Yep, Eric Gray. I love Eric Gray. Senior, didn't get a chance to start or really be the guy until his senior year. Spent 2 years at Tennessee as a former fringe 5-star recruit, depending on the recruiting site. And then he goes to Oklahoma, plays in the Lincoln Riley offense when Riley was half-assed.
Mm-hmm.
He was half-assing last year, but he got into Jeff Levy's system, and you could tell there were some warts. He wasn't seeing things very clearly. But as the season grew, I deferred to my friend AJ about this because he's a big Oklahoma guy. He mentioned it to me. Then I went back to look at his film. I saw it. He improved with his vision throughout the year because he got more reps. And he could start to see holes open up better, and he's got really quick feet and enough burst to be able to get through them. He's a smaller guy. He's 5'9", but he's not small. Like, standing next to him at the Senior Bowl, his quads were just massive. He is a well-built 210 pounds, and he plays that way. He's a natural receiver out of the backfield. This is a guy that you want to play as a third down back right away, and eventually you're going to start giving more and more touches because he ends up making an impact on the field.
Up next, we get into some corners.
Oh, I love this dude. This dude is a psycho. His name is Darius Rush, South Carolina. We talked about him when we've done mock draft episodes. This guy loses a lot. And I want to contextualize that because he gets beat off the line of scrimmage, and then he's so fast. He ran a sub 4.40. He's quick, and he's smart. Dave, he knows what routes are coming so he can undercut him and make plays on the football. If you can teach him to not lose early so often, you can have a star cornerback on your hands. That's an if. Like, Trey Waynes never figured it out. And that's kind of a good comparison because they, like, Darius Rush is a much more fluid athlete than Trey Waynes.
Turn his head.
Waynes was a stiff as a board. This
guy,
not
that he was stiff. Trey Waynes was a very good NFL quality cornerback.
Mm-hmm.
He was one of those that, when I talk about that middle expected points added, he's in that middle group, right? He was great at tackling, great against the run. It's just on passes, he could not read when a wide receiver is keying and getting ready to look back, that was his key to turn around and look back with him. Trey Waynes couldn't do that for some reason. He did learn. I'll give it to Zimmer. Taught him to, at least when he started, the wide receiver started to look back. Trey Waynes then knew enough to get his arms up. But, yeah. If this guy is as good as you say, but he needs to learn, it's worth. Where do you think he's going? Third round?
Yeah, probably. Round? I think you could sneak into the second. I'd say his range is, so this cornerback class is really going to be a pick your flavor draft. What do you want out of your corner versus I'm just going to take the best guy available?
How big is he? How
tall? He's over 6 feet. I think he's 6'1".
Then he complies.
Dan, hold on. Dan, exactly. Dan says Rush likes to pick off dig routes. I really like him also. That's exactly what I'm talking about, Dan. Like, one rep that really set him apart for me before I got into his college film was at the Senior Bowl. He got cooked off the line of scrimmage and he stumbled, but he knew the receiver was going to run. So he ended up cutting off the dig route before the receiver even broke off and got an interception. Like, that's the kind of thing that he is so good at. And if you could just teach him to play a little smarter and then you can maximize his football intelligence, and then you can do all these other things. I love the potential that this guy has, and I would love him on the Vikings. This is a Brian Flores developmental project that he could turn into like a Jonathan Jones, who's just a really good corner for multiple years for you.
Well, see, this is somebody I'd love to sit under Patrick Peterson if he was still here to learn from, to take that talent and develop it. Next one is another corner. We have Julius Brent of Kansas State.
Yeah, dude, I love Julius Brent. Brent is he is a big dude. All right. He is, what do you call it? He's like 6'3", 210, 34-inch arms. Look at those things. Like, he's barely bent and his hand is comfortably below his knee. This guy is long, but he can play press coverage. He had a 9.99 relative athletic score. I love this dude. Didn't really know much about him going into the Senior Bowl, but he balled out. Just absolutely balled out. And he can play press. He can play zone. Seattle's going to be obsessed with him because of how long he is and his athleticism. Press teams, I think he needs to be a little more physical in press. He can do it, but he needs to punch you in the mouth. He doesn't quite have that aggression yet, but he does show the potential to elevate the pop in his hands. And he played really well against my number one wide receiver, Quentin Johnston. I love what this guy brings to the field, and I think that he can be a really, really good football player for you. And Brents is my dude. I think he's scheme versatile, but you might want to prefer him in his own scheme. Odie is sniffing around, and I'm trying to make sure he doesn't eat anything that's going to kill him. I don't think there's anything in here that'll kill him, but you never know.
Both those guys would qualify. Darren did some sleuthing and found out that all the drafts that Kwesi's been involved with, they've drafted 10 to a dozen corners, and all of them except for 3 have been above 6 feet. He seems to have a type.
Yeah. I wrote an article for the Vikings Wire where I tried to understand what some of Kwesi's thresholds are. And one of the things I figured out is with defensive backs, he likes them in the 90th percentile in height. Mm-hmm. He likes the taller guys. Andrew Booth Jr. fit that. Caleb Evans fit that. Lewis Seen fit that. Will that come to fruition with Brents again? We'll find out. Next is the only quarterback you had on the list, and he'll be a late rounder. I love Jaren Hall. I don't care that he's 25 years old, and here's why I don't care. Hendon Hooker at 25 years old is a much older prospect than Jaren Hall at 25. Why? How does that make sense? Jaren Hall he served 2 years of the Mormon mission. So his body is 2 years less beaten up by football years. So in football years, he's a younger guy. And I think the value for Jaren Hall, one, he's almost better of a prospect in my eyes than Hendon Hooker. 2, I'd rather take the shot on a 25-year-old in round 3 or 4 than a 25-year-old at 23. I think the value is just significantly higher. Hall already has a lot of experience running pro-style concepts. Now, he's running those pro-style concepts in a spread formation, but he's running max protect deep shots. He's running layered crossing routes where he's got to get the ball over the linebacker. He's doing a lot of the things that you see from NFL offenses. And yeah, Dan, I agree. That's going to be a big thing. When you look at everything that Jaren Hall has, he doesn't have the elite arm. He's 6 foot and 1/8 inch tall. He's not the tallest guy in the world, but he's got that gamer mentality. He can throw off platform. He can create outside of structure. That athleticism rocks, and he can drop the ball in a bucket. You put a 50 bucket, like a Homer bucket from Home Depot, 50 yards out, Jaren Hall's hitting it. Not a lot of these guys are going to be able to hit it consistently. I know he can.
Okay, now we get to our hybrid player, quarterback / safety. One
Brian
that
Branch.
I like, Brian Branch.
I love Brian Branch. I don't know if he's going to be a target for the Vikings just because of positional value and how they would want him. This is Brian Flores' dream right here. He can play nickel. He can play outside in a pinch. He can play deep. He can play in the box. He can rove. He can do whatever you need. And that kind of versatility is something that Brian Flores just prioritizes with a bullet. And I think Branch brings that in droves. Now you can make the argument, oh, I don't want a safety 2 years in a row in the first round. He's not a traditional safety. He's going to be doing a lot of cornerback things too. At the end of the day, you need good football players who are going to help your defense, and Branch will be able to do that tenfold. I love this player. I have no idea what his draft stock is going to be, as Odie is eating an Amazon box right now because he's a little fucking shit.
We need to see Odie.
Well, I will try to bring him up because he's a little too rambunctious right now for me to grab him. He's about to start barking at the box. But yeah, I love Brian Branch.
Well, we're coming up on an hour. Do you want to squeak in a mock draft?
Let's do a quick 3-rounder, a 4-rounder. Let's just do a quick one. Get everybody out of here because I know I need to get some stuff done here tonight. I got to prepare for the Wild playoff game later, and I have a lot of Vikings wire stuff I need to do. But we promised the people mock draft. We got to deliver. Let's make it happen.
Welcome to the Real Forno Show's Mock Draft Mondays.
Who will the Vikings pick, and who's your favorite choice?
A little turkey. All right, guys, I apologize. I don't know if we're going to be able to get Odie on this program because he is looking at me like, don't you dare pick me up, Dad. I was trying to get him, and we may just have to try and squeeze in a picture or something. All right, mock draft time. We're only going to do 4 rounds today because let's just be honest with everybody. We kind of ran out of time. We talked a lot, and I will never apologize for having really good conversation just because that's where you get some of the best stuff. But let's do a mock draft because I think this is going to be really important.
Wow. We're up on the clock.
All right. So 23rd overall, we're not going to do trades. We're going to kind of look at what players are going to be available. So you have Dalton Kincaid, Brian Branch, Brian Brisset, Anton Harrison, Will McDonald, Bijan Robinson, Michael Mayer, Zay Flowers, Emmanuel Forbes. Look, you have some good players on the board here. And I think for this exercise, Dave, I want to take Brian Brisset. Brisset, athletic freak, big boy, has the ability to play. He's probably going to be a 5-tech. This is your Dalvin Tomlinson replacement with massive upside. Oh, bless me. Holy shnikes.
Whoa,
so
there we go. Quarterback of the future, Tanner McKee.
I'm not taking him, and I'll explain why in a minute. I want to finish with Brisset. Torn ACL in 2021. His little 15-year-old sister died in 2022. This dude's been through a lot. Plus, when you pair all that together, Dave, he had to deal with the defensive coordinator change. Brent Venables had been so entrenched in that program, he left to coach Oklahoma after 2021. That had a massive impact on his on the end of his college career. I'm willing to bet on him. He's the 20th ranked recruit of all time, according to the 24/7 Sports Composite. I love this dude. So let's talk about the quarterback, Tanner McKee. I just finished him up. You can go read my report on VikingsWire.com. Look, I'm out on Tanner McKee right now. I don't know how to really context what he dealt with. Like, that Stanford offense blows. It's so bad. Like, conceptually, it's bad. The talent around him is bad. The play calling is bad. But within that, you can see great players rise above and be better than their surroundings. I did not see that from Tanner McKee. And to me, that's worrisome. His ball
he was recruited and offered scholarships everywhere. Alabama, Notre Dame, all sorts of schools were offering it.
He's a 5-star.
Mm-hmm.
Like this is a dude. And you got to remember, Stanford, after Andrew Luck and like Jim Harbaugh, David Shaw did a fantastic job with that program until the last couple of years. Like, I'm out on McKee. If you're taking a mid-round guy, it's Jaren Hall, DTR, or Clayton Tune for me. Like, I'm good on Tanner McKee, man. Jake Hayner's a guy I'd consider as well. Very distributor of the ball. Like, he is Case Keenum without the bozo gene. Okay, so 87, Tank Dell. Let's talk about the two size deficient guys. Tank Dell, 5'8" and a quarter, 163 pounds, historically small. Trey Hodges-Tomlinson, 5'7" and a quarter, 173 pounds, with under 30-inch arms. This dude is tiny. But if Trey Hodges-Tomlinson was 6 foot with 33-inch arms, you would literally be talking about him as a top 5 pick because of the way this guy plays football. But because of his size, you see him get beat. You see him getting taken advantage of in layered concepts. He can't play like a cover 2 drop or cover 3 because when he goes back to try and attack the football, it gets over him because he's too small. So if you're going to take him, you may have to put him in the slot. But I think he could be really good there. I had a high 3rd round pick on him. I have a mid 2 on Tank Dell, and we need a wide receiver. So we're going to go Tank Dell here, and we're not going to look back. I really like his ability to get open. Dave, he's got tape all over when he was at Houston of him taking advantage of defenders in press coverage. He was beating him. He was beating him consistently. He was beating him clean.
I just don't like the size. But anyways.
On paper, it's an issue. On the field, it really hasn't shown to be an issue. And you can work with it. Now, you're going to have to do things to help him out. But the dude can ball. And I'm willing to take that risk at 87 considering what else is on the board. Now, our last pick of this draft. Like, Tank Dell almost made the All-Forno team, but I didn't want to have too many receivers. I scouted 20 receivers. I have 65 guys fully written up. Like, I didn't want to do too many receivers, so I limited it myself to 2. Not a ton here. Anthony Johnson Jr. from Iowa State, not a big guy, not a big fan. I know Dane Brugler had him in the 7th round of his mock draft that he released this morning. Dorian Williams, we heard Kevin Fielder, who, if you are subscribed to the podcast feed, you were able to listen to that. That dropped last week, talking about this linebacker class. I think he's a very good football player, but I'm not sure if the Vikings will prioritize him. I'm not sure if they'll prioritize Tank Dell because they both played a group of 5 schools. Jaren Hall is the interesting one. He's an independent, and they're going to be in the Big 12 next year. So that's a Power 5 to me, but how will that classify with his thresholds? Then we've seen after a year, literally nobody in the G5. Nobody. All 10 Power 5 players. That says something to me. But I do like Dorian Williams. Richard's saying now take Jaren Hall. I like Jaren Hall. I don't even know if he's available here. I want to say he is. You know me, I'd take Jaren Hall. I love Jaren Hall.
Let's look.
I met Jaren Hall, just an incredibly nice individual. He's a family man. He's already married with kids.
That's not spelled right.
Odie, stop eating that box.
He's draftable.
Let's
Still
take
available.
him. Let's take him. I'm gonna pound the table for Jaren Hall. I have heard that Kansas City is very high on Jaren Hall, and they may take him as a backup. Just his skill set, what he brings to the team, and like you're gonna lose a lot with Patrick Mahomes, but you can play a similar style of football. And I want to preface that because of the things Jaren Hall can do. You can play a very similar style of football with Jaren Hall that you do with Patrick Mahomes. Now, you're not going to be as effective, but not having to change your offense for a new quarterback, I think, is a really big deal. And Jaren Hall comes in as a backup. I think you have a winner there. Odie, enough.
PFF usually likes you taking quarterbacks. They did not like the Jaren Hall pick at all.
That's fine.
But that is our quick 3-round mock draft. We'll have more to talk about this week, guaranteed. As the week goes on, we've got tons of shows lined up and planned to run you all the way up to draft night.
And draft night, we're going to be we are finalizing what we are going to do. But with my Vikings Wire responsibilities and us just having fleshed out this YouTube channel, we will not be going live the entire draft like we
won't be doing wall-to-wall live, but we will be doing some shows. So,
oh yeah. Make sure you are subscribed. Make sure you have those notifications on. I will be tweeting out when we'll try to when we go out, like about 5 minutes before we go live. But a lot of it's going to be rapid fire. Like if the Vikings trade up to 3rd overall,
whoa, it's going to be fun. We'll find out.
Yeah, we're going to have some fun. And the more we know, the more you'll know. And we greatly appreciate you taking time out on this Monday night. If you're listening on demand, don't forget, we are live Monday night at 6 p.m. Central, Wednesday night at 6 p.m. Central, and Saturday afternoon at 4 p.m. Central time to bring you great Vikings content live. But it's always available on demand. So if it doesn't work with your busy schedule, if you have kids, if you're commuting home from work, here's what I do. I commute home from work. I turn on the YouTube video, have a Bluetooth. You don't need to see. You can listen. And that's one of the beautiful parts about technology these
download
days.
It on your phone. I've got it on I use an Apple. I use iTunes Podcasts. I've got it there. I listen after the fact and go, shit, I should have said that. Mm-hmm. But anyways, no, that's how I listen most of the time is podcasts. So anywhere you find podcasts, you can find Vikings First and SKOL.
Yep, absolutely. So you can make sure that you hit that subscribe, like all those fun things. Give us 5-star review on your podcast aggregator. Everything. It helps us, and we're already at over 430 subscribers on YouTube, and we feel incredibly blessed and honored that you guys have shown us this kind of support already, and we can't wait to continue to bring you even more great stuff and eventually become the #1 Vikings show on YouTube and in podcast form. Until then, make sure you tune in Wednesday night with Brett Coleman of the Film Room. I am Bootleg Football. I can't wait to just sit down, have a cocktail. Dave, I don't know if you know this. He's a huge bourbon old-fashioned guy.
Ooh,
so we can have some good conversation. Yeah.
Yes. Sounds great.
Until then, from Dave, myself, Vikings First and SKOL, the last thing we always say here, SKOL Vikings, baby.
SKOL Vikings! Like, subscribe, and ring the bell to get notifications. It helps us grow this community that we all love our Minnesota Vikings. And on behalf of Tyler Fornes and myself, Dave Stefano, thank you so dearly for watching The Real Forno Show. SKOL, everyone!